Data is everywhere. It's important to consider how data can be used and what it means for our society. But somebody has to be taking all that data and making sense of it. And in today's episode, we are going to figure out who exactly that is. Hi everybody, it's Samantha and Phoenix, and we're back with another episode that you don't want to miss on the Deeper Than Tech podcast, where we talk about how to grow your career in an industry that was not designed with us in mind. We'll be diving deep into this topic, but before we do, if you're loving our podcast so far, we appreciate it if you share it with a friend or a coworker. So Phoenix, you are a data analyst, but I am not quite clear on what's the difference between a data analyst and a data scientist.
So it is a data wild west right now. So a lot of people don't quite know, and things are actually changing. When I started my master's degree in 2018, by the time I graduated, it's a very different thing. So data scientist right now is someone who uses AI and artificial intelligence, machine learning to create insights from data. A data analyst will take the data and tell a story with it and talk to business stakeholders. They're going to develop the visualizations and be able to make decisions with the data.
Oh, that is pretty interesting. So they're more like a storyteller.
Yeah.
Have you ever told like a fun story about data? Like how do you explain the data?
Yeah. So sometimes you can either look at a graph or look at patterns, and then you're able to say, okay, based on this, we're seeing that there's a major spike happening on this day. And that spike might have meant that, this company, we put out a marketing ad, we sent out a coupon, and that is the story. We get to see okay, based on this action that we made, our clients and customers, they made this decision. But sometimes you don't know what happened. And so that's a different side of the team that will figure that out. But the analysts tell the story to help uncover that.
So are the data scientists the ones who figure out what didn't happen, like when you don't know the information?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. So the data scientist will help you figure out when you don't know what's going on. And more of the analyst side is when you do see, you kind of know what's going on, but it helps to give you some insight around it, some extra details.
Is there one field that's a little bit more popular than the other one?
I would say that the data scientist role is more popular today. That's the one that everyone wants to get into because of the AI and machine learning, but it can be a little bit hard. It's a bit of a high barrier to entry with the statistics that you need to know for it, but very popular.
So that was my follow-up question, is it easier to get into one or the other? But it sounds like machine learning is a little bit harder of a field to get into.
It can be. As a data analyst, getting into that field with a bit of Excel, with a bit of maybe Tableau visualizations, you can bring over some translatable skills. It's a lot harder to do the machine learning and statistics and try to translate it from a different field.
So with data scientists, a skill that you need to have is machine learning. What other skills are required?
Yeah, for machine learning, I would also say Python is a good one. There's definitely some coding languages that you want to know for data scientist roles.
I did a quick little intro of data science in the past. I also had to learn this thing called pandas. Is that very common in the industry?
It is. Pandas is one of the libraries in Python that you'd want to know. So pandas and NumPy, depends on, it's kind of like the GIF thing. Yeah, those are some pretty important libraries to know.
What is so special about those libraries, would you say?
It's because they're specifically catered towards data. Many of the libraries in Python would be for developers, software developers, whether it's front-end or back-end. But for data, those are specifically catered towards finding out insights and particular functions you can use for specifically doing the machine learning side of things.
And then what kind of skills are required for a data analyst?
Yeah, for a data analyst, I mentioned earlier that it's helpful to have some Excel or Tableau. You want some sort of visualization tool. So that might be Tableau or Power BI, which is Microsoft, or Looker, which is Google. But having some SQL knowledge as well is really helpful as a data analyst. And I sit somewhere in between as an analytics engineer. And so that's especially helpful with SQL, some Python. But it's a relatively new term, a new field, which is pretty equivalent to the back end of software development. And more of the analyst is more the front end, creating the visualizations and the user experience, the user interface.
Can you go a little bit more into the backend? What is that? Because like sometimes people are like, oh, front end versus back end, software engineering. Yeah. So what is like front end versus back end in, I guess, data analyst engineering? I don't really know a term for it.
Yeah, analytics engineering is a brand new field, so you're not the only one. And so at one point, data scientists and data analysts, it was hard to really tell, like, what do they do? And it's kind of data scientists are taking raw data and finding insights. The data analysts are using the cleaned up data. And sometimes the data engineers would make that, but an analytics engineer is someone who works with the data engineers. So data engineers, more coding, backend, and then the analytics engineer will take that data and make it, just clean it up before it ever gets to the analyst so that you can do more with it rather than trying to clean it up, because data cleaning takes up so much time. It's helpful to have multiple people in that process.
It does. I remember trying to clean some data. It's also like determining what data can you clean up. Sometimes there'll be like empty null values, but do you keep that data, or do you figure out how to replace that data with something that you could probably find online? Like say like movies, you could probably look online to see, hey, was that R-rated? And you could like fill in that data. So I feel cleaning up data is a lot.
Yeah. So the analytics engineer looks to do all of that in a more automated process before it even gets to the analyst so that they don't have to worry about that piece.
So another thing I think of when you're saying analytic engineers.
Yeah, analytics engineer. Perfect.
Yep. Is Netflix has its recommendation engine. Is that somebody who's on the data side giving us that information?
Yeah, I would say is the data scientist using their machine learning technologies to basically take information that's kind of unstructured and try to estimate some type of outcome. So yeah, when you're thinking of like recommendation systems, that's definitely on the data scientist side. And so tying in the data analyst after you've watched, perhaps, they might be able to look at the data after and say, hey, based on these recommendations, we have a 10% jump increase of usage, right? So they work together in tandem.
Okay, that's cool. Who is your stakeholder when it comes to analytics engineering?
For analytics engineering, the stakeholders would be both the analysts and the data engineers. So, and a bit of DevOps. So like looking at the operations, the pipelines, a little bit more internal to the company.
Okay. So when a data engineer or data scientist comes over and they want to like do a little exercise, let's say they want to know how many women are watching this TV show. Do you have to do anything? Like what exactly do you do to give them back the information that they need?
So for that one, you mean as an analytics engineer or just in general, the data? So as an analytics engineer, yeah, that one requires going in and checking if we even have that data like early on from the get-go. So as an analytics engineer, we're looking at, do we even have the proper ways of collecting that data in the first place? So there's the cleaning aspect and there's the, is this accurate? Is anything kind of off, right? Like if we found data that said there are no women watching these shows, it's like, okay, clearly something's wrong. And so it's our turn to investigate and see what makes sense. And then once we have something that makes sense, we can put together a model, and that model will help to push the data forward into the data warehouse in a way that the analyst could then take it and decide like how they best want to present that story to the business.
Okay, you're presenting to the CEO of the business. Who are we presenting this data to?
It really is everyone.
Everyone?
Sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes it's the marketing team, sometimes it's HR if we're looking at internal data. So basically everyone wants data. Like everyone is coming to us as like the hottest club in town. And so it's up to us to really decide how much we can take on and advocate for ourselves. Like it's a big part of the role.
Yeah, I remember watching this documentary and my favorite line was like, data is worth more than oil, which I thought was a really strong statement to say because really everybody wants data. Like Facebook charges people so much money for their ads, but there's so much data that they have to like make sure they target the right people so you can make sure you sell the right stuff. So data is crazy. I wish I was more into data. I mean, I am, but I didn't like pandas. It was a little too hard for me, but that's just my opinion. But how did you get into this field? Like, what made you choose this route?
That's a really interesting question because I didn't quite choose to be here. It kind of found me in an interesting way. I mentioned earlier that I went into my master's program. It was an analytics degree, and it said that at the end of the program, I could go in and get a data scientist role. But by the end of the program, when I applied everywhere, they were like, sorry, data scientist means this new definition. We need you to know pandas and Python and all of this, but that's not what I had gotten in my degree, but I knew I wanted something technical. So then I did some self-teaching of SQL, and I learned some GitHub and put together just kind of a career plan of how do I get to a more technical role that's not software development, but still data. Lo and behold, analytics engineering became a thing. And so this company called DBT, stands for Data Build Tool, they put together the first analytics engineering conference about a year ago, and that sparked this wave. There's already a lot of people using it, but that was the best tool to take data that was raw database from the backend and transform it in a way that the analysts could use. So that's just how I found it. It's a new tool. I decided to take it up, and voila, here we are.
It's funny how life just throws us in these weird paths that we don't expect. So I'm glad that you were able to find that path for you. When you were looking for a job, what kind of companies were you looking for? What companies are looking for data scientists and data analytics?
Everyone's looking for these roles. So as we mentioned, everyone wants data. Everyone also has data. Everything is. I know that for me, when I started looking, I was looking all over the map, but I found that I resonated more towards the health field and especially health tech. But I spent some time as an analytics engineer in the kind of commerce and providing services to customers, but eventually found my way back to health.
And then one last question I have for you. So we have these terms, all these different fields. Is there a bucket term for everything?
I would love for it all to be under the data science umbrella, but it is still a wild west at the moment and things are still changing and moving, but there's not a singular term and different companies will call them different things. So I'm actually giving a talk next month to help demystify all of this. So I'm excited to be part of the movement to help get it underneath one umbrella.
Okay, we will definitely link your talk below. Is it going to be recorded?
I believe it will be.
Yeah, so we'll definitely link it into the show notes. So make sure you check out Phoenix's talk. Thank you so much for telling us about the different fields. Until next time, bye.